Some stories sound almost too constructed to be real. A pattern of fire, money, sudden deaths, and unanswered questions that seem to repeat just a little too neatly to be coincidence. In the early 1900s, one name kept resurfacing in that kind of pattern across the American Midwest. A woman connected to multiple disappearances, multiple fires, and a farm that would later reveal something far darker than anyone expected. Her name was Belle Gunness, but even that simple statement is unstable, because depending on which record you trust, she either died in a fire, escaped entirely, or carefully staged her own death and disappeared into anonymity. And the uncomfortable part is this: the evidence never fully settles in one direction. To understand how she became tied to all of this, you have to start far away from Indiana in rural Norway. Belle was born as Belle Paulsen in a small community in Selbu, Norway. Her early life is often described in fragments, and those fragments don't always agree. Some accounts describe a strict, frugal household trying to survive on a limited income. Others emphasize something more unusual, a family that performed for money. Her father, Peter Paulsen, is often described as a traveling entertainer, the kind of person who moved between towns doing odd jobs, performances, and small construction work. Belle reportedly grew up around that environment, occasionally assisting in performances. There are even claims she performed physical stunts as a child, though it is difficult to separate fact from embellishment this far back. What does appear consistent is the financial mindset of the household. Money was not wasted. It was stored, saved, and accumulated with unusual discipline for a rural family of that era. By the time Belle reached her teenage years, the family had saved enough to retire from their lifestyle and buy a small farm in Norway. But Belle did not seem interested in staying there. In 1881, she made a decision that would change the entire direction of her life. She emigrated to the United States. Like many European immigrants at the time, she arrived with the expectation that America meant opportunity. But unlike many others, she appeared to arrive with a very specific goal in mind: financial advancement as quickly as possible. She settled in Illinois, and within a couple of years, she met a Swedish immigrant named Mads Sorensen. They married and eventually moved to Chicago. Together, they opened a small candy store. At first, it looked like a modest but honest attempt at stability. But the business struggled almost immediately. Sales slowed, profits disappeared, and pressure mounted. And then the pattern begins. One night, a fire broke out in the store. The building was destroyed. Fortunately, no one was killed. But the timing raised questions. Insurance was involved, claims were filed, and investigators quickly noted that the origin of the fire was unclear. The store would later be replaced, but the relationship between financial instability and sudden disaster had now appeared once, and it would not be the last. Not long after, Matt Sorensen's life insurance policies became relevant in a way that would later draw attention. He had two overlapping policies active for a short window of time, and during that exact window, he died. The official explanation was natural causes, specifically heart failure following a reported headache. Belle later stated she gave him medication and found him dead shortly after. But his relatives were not convinced. They pointed out something important. He had no known serious health problems. He was described as generally healthy and active. Suspicion centered on the possibility of poisoning, though no definitive proof was ever established at the time. Still, the financial outcome was clear. Insurance payouts were collected quickly, reportedly amounting to thousands of dollars, a significant sum for that period. Then came another fire. The home, shared by Belle and her husband, burned down as well. At this point, even without direct evidence of wrongdoing, the pattern was becoming difficult to ignore. Insurance payouts, fires, and sudden deaths clustered around the same person. Yet, each investigation ended the same way. No charges, no proven fraud, no confirmed cause beyond accident or natural death. Belle moved forward each time. Eventually, she left Chicago and relocated to La Porte, purchasing a farm on the outskirts of the town. Here, she would build what appeared to be a new life. She remarried a man named Belle Gunness. Together, they ran a small farm operation and butcher-related business. For a brief period, things appeared stable. Then another death occurred. Belle Gunness died under highly unusual circumstances involving a heavy meat grinder allegedly falling out from a shelf and striking his head. The explanation given was accidental. No clear evidence contradicted it at the time. Belle was left as a widow again, and now with children in the household and the farm to manage alone. And the situation around her began to shift. One of her adopted daughters, a teenage girl named Jenny, disappeared. Belle told authorities she had been sent away for education. The explanation was accepted without much challenge. This detail matters because it shows a recurring pattern. Statements from Belle were often taken at face value, even when later events made them questionable. Shortly afterward, Belle placed an advertisement in newspapers across major cities. It was a marriage advertisement, but not a romantic one in the typical sense. It was structured like a transaction. A wealthy widow seeking a financially stable man willing to relocate and merge fortunes. The response was significant. Men began traveling to her farm, and one by one, several of them disappeared. Among them was an elderly widower named Ole Budsberg. He left home with the intention of meeting Belle and was never seen again afterward. His sons later investigated, discovering that he had withdrawn money shortly before vanishing. That detail made the situation even more suspicious, but again, nothing immediate was proven. Another man, Andrew Helgeland, traveled to the farm after extensive correspondence. He arrived with plans to help improve the property and potentially build a shared life. Shortly after arriving, he disappeared as well. His last known financial activity involved a loan arranged with Belle's involvement. After that, money was distributed across accounts and communication with his family stopped. When his brothers began asking questions, Belle claimed Andrew had left for Norway after receiving funds. It was a story that could not be verified. And then came the event that shattered everything open. In April 1908, a fire destroyed Belle's farmhouse. When authorities arrived, they found multiple bodies inside, a woman and several children. At first, officials assumed the deceased woman was Belle herself, but the condition of the remains raised doubts. The head was missing. Identification was not straightforward. The idea formed that perhaps Belle had staged her own death by placing another woman's body in her place. Then investigators searched the property more thoroughly. What they found changed the entire case. Buried across the farm were multiple human remains. Eventually, at least a dozen victims were identified or linked to missing persons cases. Some were fully identified and others never were. The remains showed signs of dismemberment and careful disposal. In some cases, bodies had been separated in ways suggesting anatomical knowledge or deliberate effort to move and conceal them. Tools were discovered that may have been used in the process. Nearby burial areas and farm structures contained additional remains. The scale suggested something far beyond isolated incidents. At this point, the central question shifted. Was Belle dead in the fire, or had she used it as a cover to disappear? One forensic detail complicated things. A jawbone found among the remains showed dental work that matched Belle's records. Personal items also appeared consistent with hers. Some investigators concluded that she likely died in the fire. Others argued the remains could have been staged. Then came another layer of uncertainty. Testimony suggesting an accomplice named Ray, a laborer who had worked on the farm. He initially denied involvement, but later admitted to participating in the fire, though not necessarily in the killings. Later accounts conflicted further, including claims that he had helped with burials and witnessed acts of violence. He died shortly after being sentenced for arson, limiting further clarification. Even after that, additional statements from investigators and informants contradicted each other, leaving no single consistent narrative. By the time the case cooled, doubt never disappeared. Some believed she perished in the blaze, others believed she escaped and assumed a new identity. And some believed the truth may never be fully known because too many of the key witnesses were dead, unreliable, or contradictory. What remains is a farm that produced one of the most disturbing clusters of missing persons cases in American criminal history, and the central figure whose fate still sits in uncertainty. The estimated victim count varies widely, often cited as at least a dozen, but some estimates go much higher depending on how many disappearances are linked to her correspondence and property. And the hardest part of the story is not the number, it is the lack of closure. Because in the end, there are only 3 possibilities left on the table. She died in the fire, she escaped and vanished, or the truth was buried so thoroughly with the victims that it will never be recovered. And more than a century later, no one can confidently eliminate any of those options. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Please don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.